Okay, well, it is time now to go over some standards and regulations on record keeping and what are our requirements with documents maintained in the center. Like I had mentioned in the other webinar, this is one of my big pet peeves to get a deficiency on record keeping. There should really be no reason for it. You collect all your paperwork up front, you maintain your paperwork. It should be an easy part of our job. However, a lot of people make it very difficult. Don't make this difficult. Make this easy, okay? That's just the best advice I've got for you right there. Probably the biggest question that we have on record keeping these days, can I have a combination of electronic records and paper records? And the answer is yes, you can have a combination of the two. You can, or either one. And even courts of law are now accepting electronic signatures as a legal signature. So we're starting to see more and more enrollment forms, those type of documents that are being done in an electronic fashion, and licensing will accept those now. You'll even see some of the new standards that will address acceptance of electronic records, all right? The problem with electronic records and where you're going to run into your challenge is the employees having access to the electronic records. And so with children's records, with personnel records, whoever the manager on duty is has to have access to those. So whatever system you put in place in your program to ensure that access is granted in these situations, that's what you've got to look at right there. We'll go ahead and kind of go over this right here, looking at page 15 of the standards. Who has a right to access children's records? Again, it must be immediately accessible to all caregivers during hours of operation in the event of an emergency. Look at B as in boy. It says parents have a right to access their own child's records during parent conferences with the caregiver or director. Key word right here is that they have a right to access their child's record. They can look at their child's file. They do not have a right to take, okay? Those records belong to you. They are your property. They can look at them, but they can't take them. If you run into a situation where a parent wants copies of their child's file, of course, the recommendation is that these are subpoenaed. Normally, they want these in a custody situation, or there's two parents or whatnot, and they're not wanting to share information. That needs to kind of stay away from your facility. You need to have a policy in your handbook that parents take care of custody situations outside of your facility, and it's their responsibility to share documents and to share information. If they are needing these documents for court, their attorney needs to have it subpoenaed. Also, you have to have time to prepare those documents too, because the most common document that they want copies of is sign in and out sheets. What time is the child being dropped off? When is the child in attendance? Who's dropping them off? That's what they mainly want. Well, I don't know about y'all, but on my sign in and out sheets, it's got the entire class listed on there. You're going to have to go in and black out all of those other kids, names and information, and only provide that parent with that child's, information. So that takes time. I just recently had a situation, even though our handbook says that we prefer not to get involved in custody situations, we got a subpoena on a Tuesday evening at 5 p.m. wanting 6 months worth of sign in and out sheets in the courtroom at 9 o'clock the next day. Obviously, that was not enough time to prepare those documents, and we had to make a phone call to that attorney and tell them that that was not reasonable, and ask them to reconsider their request. Now, of course, hopefully the attorney says, yep, you're right, that's a lot of documents, you can't do that in a couple of hours. But if they say too bad, so sad, then guess what you're doing Tuesday night. All right. Also, it says that all children's records can be reviewed and reproduced by licensing. Okay. So here's a little thing right here. If a parent ever does argue with you and say, I want a copy of my kid's file, you are required to make me a copy. No, you don't. And you can compare B and C and look at the difference between these two sentences. It says parents have a right to access their child's records, but then C, it says all children's records can be reviewed and reproduced or reproduced by licensing. That reproduction word is not up here in B. All right. So you don't have to require those copies unless you have a court order. Okay. Page 15 at the bottom is going to give you just a list of all of the documents that you must have on file for the children. We're going to go through each one of these documents separately. You can use page 15 as kind of a checklist to make sure that you've got everything that you need. Maybe retype it so it looks a little prettier, but this is a nice checklist. Let's kind of go on over to page 16 right now. And let's go to 746-605. What admissions information must I obtain for each child? So this is what we typically call our enrollment form or registration form, whatever you call it in your world. And all of this information must be obtained. This is where we had talked about in the other webinar, all information must be filled out. Don't leave anything blank, and kind of tell the parent there's no not applicables. All right. Everything is applicable to you. So child's name and date of birth, obvious. Child's home address and telephone number, got to have that. I had a parent one time that got real ugly with me and refused to give me her child's home address, said it was none of my business, and she thought it was creepy that I was asking for it. I kind of had to tell her, lady, I really don't care where you live. It's required by licensing. I've got to have this information. She obviously was hiding something. I think they were on the run with CPS after we got to know the family a little bit more. You know, who knows what the information or what was really going on there. Date of admission, very commonly missed right here, but that first date of admission must be on that form. And then let's talk about number 4, name and address of parents, plural. All right. So let's be honest and real for just a moment. For every child out there, there was a sperm and there was an egg that made that child. Okay. There's a mother, there's a father somewhere. All right. Now, you could have a single parent adoption. You could have mom got pregnant and she has absolutely no idea who the father is and no father's name is listed on the birth certificate. You could have that. You know, an artificial insemination. You know, who knows what it is. You could have a situation where only one parent is listed on the birth certificate. If that is the case, you have every right to request the birth certificate for review. All right, have the parent bring in the birth certificate, you take a look at it, validate the information. You can do that. Otherwise, you have to assume there's a mother, there's a father out there. Now, if you're taking notes right now, I want you to write this down, okay? This is huge, and this needs to be in your parent handbook. In the absence of a court order, both parents have equal rights, all right? In the state of Texas, if we do not have a court order in that child's file, both parents have equal rights. Even if mom came in, enrolled the kid, left dad's information blank, said dad's not in the picture, all right, if dad could easily show up, okay, and as long as he's got a copy of the birth certificate and a picture ID, legally he has a right to access that child. I don't care who enrolled the kid. I don't care who's paying the tuition. All of that is irrelevant. If dad can prove that he's the father, he's got rights, unless you have a court order stating otherwise. So the way I like to do it, and I brought up some samples for you that I thought I would share. I find the right one here. I'm sorry. I brought up too many documents. So this is like a sample form that I use right here. And you'll notice that on mine, there's a mark that says, is there a custody order on file with the state of Texas? Circle yes, no, pending. If you circle yes, a current copy must be attached. All right. That's the way I do it. So right there, they've got to tell me if there's a court order. If you collect paperwork and they either circle no or pending, or they leave this blank, most of the time they just leave it blank, you've got to let them know that in the absence of a court order, both parents have equal rights. All right. You'll also kind of notice that with mine, I've changed it just because this is such a big issue. I have parent 1 full name, parent 2 full name, and relationship to child. Because you just have too many situations nowadays where it's a mom and a stepdad, dad and stepmom, grandmother, grandfather. It could be mom and mom. There's so many different family structures that are out there. We want to be respectful to everyone. We want to be accepting of everyone. And we just want to collect the right information. What tends to happen when you have mother and you have father is that they'll list mom, but then they'll list stepdad as father, and that's falsifying a legal document. He's not father, he's stepfather. So you've got to get the relationship correct. All right. I have found that changing the enrollment form to say this right here helps us collect the right information. All right. Like I had mentioned earlier, when it comes to custody situations, let your parents know that you prefer not to get involved in this. We are here to care and to educate young children, and they need to handle all their custody drama at home. All right. Of course, telephone numbers that the parents can be reached at. Oh, and let me back up. I have a whole webinar that's on my website on custody issues. If you want more information on all of this, there's an hour-long webinar just on custody issues that you can watch on my website. All right. Name and address of parents, telephone numbers where they can be reached. And in number 6, I want y'all to pay close attention to 605, number 6. Name, address, and telephone number of another responsible individual that can be contacted in an emergency. This right here is the number 1 deficiency in the book right now. 605, number 6 is being cited more than anything in this book. The reason why is people don't list the address. Okay, that's what they typically forget to write down. And just like on my enrollment form, and I know my spot is really small, I'm going to have to try to fix this. They just leave this one blank. And then when licensing comes out to audit you, this is a deficiency. Or they'll put, Peggy Smith, and then they'll just write Dallas. Okay, that's a deficiency. It has to be the full address. The reason for this is that obviously, in the event of an emergency, if we can't get a hold of the parent, we've got to be able to get a hold of someone else. But the reason why the address is so important is that if in a significant situation, you have a child that is in your care, and while the child is at your program, both parents die. Mom passes away, dad passes away, maybe a car wreck, a plane crash, whatever it may be. And I know that's horrible to talk about, but it happens, okay? If both parents die while that child is in your care, the state of Texas they must have the adequate amount of information needed to place that child with the next person in line. Does that make sense to everyone? And I know parents are always going to say, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Well, you can't really say that. Who knows what could happen? All right. I have found that sometimes when you explain the reason why we have to have some information, they tend to be more willing to comply when they know the reason behind it. All right. So, yeah, sad stuff right there. You only have to have one emergency contact according to licensing. You'll see here where it just says a person. I always recommend 3. And again, if you notice on my my form, please list 3 local individuals that we can contact. You know, I've had it where I've had a situation at the school. We can't get a hold of mom or dad. I called the emergency contact, and it's grandma in Florida. All right. Well, grandma in Florida does me no good. Or grandpa that's in a wheelchair that rides the bus around town is not going to be able to help me. I need 3 local people that can assist in an emergency. Now, I had a family one time, wonderful family, that moved here from Ohio. Dad worked for a bank and was transferred down to Texas when they enrolled at our school. And I said, I need 3 local contacts. Dad was like, we don't know anybody. We just moved to Texas. We're brand new to Texas. We know nobody. So I had told him, you know, on the enrollment form right here, I want you to list your new supervisor, your HR rep, and your real estate agent. You know, those are 3 people that typically can always get a hold of you. And, you know, and once you get down here and y'all make friends, then you can change this to say whatever you want, you know, and that's exactly what they did. So it works out well. All right. Any other people that are authorized to pick up the child are going to be listed on the form. All of your permissions, if applicable. So if you are transporting, if you are doing field trips, if you are doing water activities, you need to have all those signatures. On number 11, where it talks about name, address, and telephone number of the child's physician or the emergency care facility. A lot of times they'll just try to write down closest hospital. All right. They cannot write closest hospital. They have to actually put the emergency care facility address and phone number. What I have found to be very helpful is that in your enrollment packet, make a cheat sheet and list out all the local pediatricians, address, phone numbers, local hospitals, you know, address, phone numbers, even the elementary schools that are in your area and those phone numbers. Set the parent up for success and give them that information so they've got it right there to put on their enrollment form. I have found that this works really well. And especially if you do have a family that's just moving into the area, this is a great resource for them, and they really appreciate it. Sometimes I hear centers say, well, we'll fill that blank in for you. Just go ahead and leave that blank and we'll fill it in for you. Oh, please do not do that. That's a big time no-no right there. The parent needs to be the one filling it in. That could cause you a lot of legal grief in the event of a significant event. All right. Under a statement of the child's special needs, I'll kind of show you again my example right here. You know, again, does your child have any special needs? If so, list them below. If you don't have any special needs, then you initial there. So make sure that they acknowledge that there are no special needs. The reason why I do it that way is that sometimes they will either leave that blank or they'll say there's no special needs. And then after you enroll the child and they've been with you for 3 or 4 weeks, then they come back and they say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, the child is autistic or has Asperger's or, whatever the special need may be. And now I've already had the kid for 3 weeks. It makes it very difficult. Okay. But get that in there so that you can determine if you can accommodate that child or not. All right. Name and telephone number of the school that the child attends if it's a school-age child. This is where I had mentioned in the other webinar, permission for a school-age child to ride a bus, walk to, or to be released to a sibling under the age of 18. I wish I could just tell you to scratch number 15 out. That one right there scares me to death, especially the walking to and from part. But the biggest thing is being released to the sibling. And again, this is only applicable to school-age children right there. All right. And then number 16 is your food allergy emergency plan, if applicable. So if you have a parent that tells you their child is allergic to a particular food, you need to fill out that emergency plan and have it signed by a healthcare professional. All right. Make sure that the parents sign it. If they refuse to sign the enrollment form, that's normally a big red flag. All right. So make sure you get that signature and make sure you have a system in place to get updated information. I will normally have the parent fill out a new enrollment form every year, just the enrollment form, because my whole thought is between work phone numbers, cell phone numbers, emergency contacts, authorized pickups, and the amount of times people change jobs these days, someone's number has changed and someone's address has changed. I just like to get new, fresh enrollment forms every year. Otherwise, have a good system in place that if something does change, they give that to you in writing and you update your records. All right. The health statement is the next one. And I call it a physician statement in my world. They call it a health statement. But it's a written statement from the healthcare professional who has examined the child within the past year, indicating that they can take part in the program. Also, by the way, after April of 2017, you're going to notice that anywhere where it used to say physician, it now says healthcare professional. Because licensing has recognized that there's a lot of people that are using alternate methods of health treatment rather than just doctors, that there's a lot of alternate methods that people are using. And so that's why it says healthcare professional now instead of physician. This is a big thing, is the statement saying that they can take part in your program. I just opened a brand new school. And so as we're enrolling all of the kids in the new school, I've seen this numerous of times where we get a copy of the shot record or the doctor fills in the shot record part, but that's it. Okay. Yes, the immunization records are important, but the biggest piece of information on this document is that the child has been examined within the past year and that they can take part of your program. Make sure you get that part. Now, it could also be a signed affidavit from the parent stating that this conflicts with their beliefs, all right, whether it be religious beliefs or creed, all right, that comes up every once in a while. And then over on page 18, it could also be a signed statement from the parent giving the name and address of the healthcare professional who has examined the child within the past year, stating that they can take part in the program, which is then followed by a statement from the healthcare professional within 12 months of the date of admission. I don't recommend that you do number 3. I recommend that you do number 1 and then you're done. All right. If you allow the parent to do number 3, where you get the statement from the parent, now you're going to have to follow up in 12 months and get that signature from the doctor. 12 months is going to sneak up on you really fast. You're going to forget. The parent's going to be busy. You're going to be out of compliance. Just get the signature from the doctor right up front. You're done. Okay. And remember on page 7, you have a right to exceed anything in this book. So you're totally fine going this route. Unless, like I said, it conflicts with a belief, then you're done on that one too. A lot of times I get the question, especially with church programs, faith-based programs, do I have to get a new health statement every year? Well, a lot of you in the faith-based world, you'll operate from September to May, and then you're closed during the summertime. Very common right there. Well, whether or not you have to get a new health statement is going to come down to how your policies are written. Okay. If it is automatically assumed that that child will continue their enrollment with you year after year, then you're fine. You don't need a new health statement. If your policy says that the child's enrollment ends at the end of May and the parent has to re-register their child every August or September, then you have to get a new health statement. All right. So it's kind of, you got to be careful with the wording right there. Okay. Now I have known some licensing reps that as long as it's continuous and the only time away from the center is when the center is closed during the summertime, that you can just have the parent initial that nothing has changed and they'll accept that. That just depends on your local licensing rep and their interpretation. Typically, if you end enrollment and you make them re-register, you've got to have a new health statement. Okay. Continuation of care, you don't. All right. Again, it says you must have the health statement on file at your center within 1 week of the date of admission. I recommend that you exceed on this one and get it in advance. So again, I don't want to have to chase documents. All right. Immunizations, again, parents are required to provide a copy of their child's immunizations. We are required to keep up with this. However, I would still put it in your parent handbook that it is the parent's responsibility to keep up with this. That way you don't get the parent yelling at you that no one told them they were past due and it's our fault. Okay. You can go to this website right here and find the requirements for immunizations. Most of us are pretty used to them nowadays. You're going to have to find whatever system works best for you on how to keep up with this. I use ProCare, in my centers, where with ProCare, we keep up with our immunizations and we can run reports and track it. It's really nice. That's a great way of doing it. There's other softwares out there that will keep up with this and help you out. You can also do it the good old-fashioned way and with paper. All right. If you have a family that immunizations conflict with their beliefs, then they can get a notarized affidavit stating that immunizations conflict with the belief, and you can have that on file. Now, totally different training, but immunizations are covered under a federally protected class. You cannot discriminate against a family who chooses not to get their immunizations. That is considered creed, and it's a protected class. So I get questions all the time from people, can we have a policy that says we do not take children that have not received immunizations? The answer is no, you cannot have that policy. It's against federal law. You can't discriminate against them. There's a lot of legal stuff going on right now especially in California. They're kind of the leading state on this particular issue. So we're watching these cases really closely, because what happens in some of these states with immunizations could change this whole federal view on discrimination. But as of right now, you can't discriminate against these folks. All right. It's going to talk about what documentation must you have. Just that document from the doctor. You can provide that. They can fill it out, or they can send theirs as well. If you do just get a copy of the immunizations from the doctor, they will normally do a computer printout with the stamp or signature from the physician. Just remember, you still have to have the health statement saying that they've been examined within the past year. All right. If the child's immunization records are already on file at a public school, then we don't have to have them. You just want to have the information from the school on file where those can be obtained. As far as TB testing is concerned, TB testing is no longer required by child care licensing. You're going to have to refer to your local health department on their expectations with TB testing. I own 4 centers up here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I operate in 3 different counties. 2 of the counties that I have schools in, we don't have to do anything with TB testing. 1 county that I'm in, we have to have TB testing upon hire. So it's different all around the state with your local health department. All right. You'll even see with licensing, this is now an if applicable standard. At the bottom of page 20 is going to be your vision and hearing screening. You've got a website that you can go to right here for more information on vision and hearing screening. For your pre-kindergarten children, this has to be done. You can either send the child to their healthcare professional and have this done and bring back documentation. You can bring in someone like the Lions Club that will do vision and hearing screening, or you can actually go to this website right here and take a class and become certified to do this yourself. If you take that class and you become certified, you can do all your kids too. All right. Same thing as TB and immunizations and health checks. If the vision and hearing screening conflicts with a belief, then they can have the notarized affidavit for that. All right. All right, here's a big one right here. Must I have a system for signing children in and out? This is like one of the most important documents that you need to have in your center. Okay, it's right up there with personnel policies and job descriptions. The sign in and out sheet, okay, is a document that we use for tracking when children are coming in and when they're leaving your center. All right, it must include the name of the child, the date, the time of arrival, the time of departure, and the employee or parent's initials, okay? Even though it says it can be done by the employee or the parent, I strongly, strongly suggest that this is done by the parent. The reason why is from a legal standpoint. The sign in and out sheet is that moment in time where the responsibility of the child shifts from caregiver to parent and then parent to caregiver. All right. It's like running a relay race and then passing the baton is exactly what it's like. And we have seen lots of court cases where the parent signs the child out and then the parent's chit-chatting with the teacher and the kid grabs their backpack and goes running down the hallway. And then they trip and they fall and they break their arm. And then, there's a big battle of who's responsible for the broken arm now. Is it the school because it happened on our property, or is it the parent? Well, You got to come back. Was the school negligent? Were there any tripping hazards? Was there a wet floor? You know, bottom line is the kid tripped over their own 2 feet. Parents sign the child out. The child is the parent's responsibility at that point. If you didn't have that sign in and out sheet indicating that the parent assumed the responsibility of the child, that could go a different direction. All right. So it's a big one. Now you will see that it does say a tracking system may be paper or it may be automated, automated with a unique identifier. We have with ProCare, which is what I use, we use the ProCare system where the parents fingerprint their children in and out every day with the parent's fingerprint, but I also make them do it in the classroom too. So they have to do it twice in my world, okay? Because I'm really big on this. I cannot properly supervise your child unless I know they're there, okay? And there's got to be that moment in time where the responsibility goes from parent to caregiver and caregiver to parent. I will say that, kind of off subject, not really off subject, I do charge my parents a $5 penalty if they forget to sign their child in or out. Okay. That way they do it and they get it done. All right. We also add a lot of additional methods for attendance tracking, not only the sign in and out sheet, but also roll call sheets. One of the examples that I pulled up on the screen that I was going to show you is what I call my transition sheet, and it looks a lot like this. Every teacher gets one of these at the beginning of the day. They handwrite the children that are present that day, because the difference between this transition sheet and the sign in and out sheet, the sign in and out sheet is computer generated, so it may have children that are not present that day. On this document, the transition sheet, I only want the children that are present that day. So the teacher handwrites them in, age of the child, what time did they come in, and every single time they transition throughout the day, they take roll and they do their name to face, name to face, name to face, and then document again, when did they leave and who did they go home with. They also document down here how many teachers, how many children were in the classroom at each of these given times. So that helps us with ratios, but it's also really good, again, for legal purposes. And even the teachers down here will write the teacher's name, what time did they come in, what time did they come out, et cetera, et cetera. Even if I step into the classroom to give a potty break, then I will write my name down here. When did I come in to give the potty break? When did I leave? That's, by the way, why you have several of these, is coming and going from lunch breaks, potty breaks, things like that. If I were to have a significant event and I had to go into a court of law, this is a beautiful document right here that basically recreates my entire day. All right. So it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And it just helps you with this up here. All right. All right. Very good. Accidents. Licensing would not need to see this form, though. No, this would be an additional document that you're using. Now, of course, remember, licensing has a right to access any child's record. So when we go back right here, licensing has a right to review any record pertaining to a child. So could they look at this? Absolutely. But typically, as long as you're doing your sign in and out sheet, you're good. All right. The more documents you got, the better off you are. All right. And I have seen in a lot of situations, especially when licensing is investigating supervision, that document is extremely helpful in defending yourself in supervision cases. All right. Because you're showing that you have a system in place, that you've got constant checks on these kids. All right. So it's really good. Records of accidents and incidents need to be documented. You can use the licensing incident and illness report or other form containing this required information. You know, the licensing incident and illness report, it's a good document, but it's very intimidating. There's a lot of information on there. You can create your own form as long as it's got this required information on it right here. And this is a lot less scary than that licensing form. And it's got everything that you need to have. The date, the time, the child's name, what employees were involved, what happened, how did you take care of it? And then we've added a few other bits of information. Did we notify the parent? Is the child excluded? If so, when can they return? And then, of course, all of your required signatures. And I have this document printed on NCR forms. So it's the white page and then the yellow page on the back, so it duplicates itself. So that way when the parent signs it, they get the yellow copy, we get the white copy, everyone's happy and satisfied. It works really well. Now, if you do have a situation where you have to report an injury or incident to licensing, then you do have to use their little form up here, okay? And again, you can download all of these forms from licensing's website, all right? If the director is not available to sign, then whoever is in charge at the time has to sign it. They added that into the standards this year that, well, my director was not available to sign. Well, whoever is left in charge has to sign it, okay? There you go. All right. On 801, other records that must be kept on file, page 22 and page 23 is what I like to call my compliance binder. And I like to get just a notebook binder like this with page protectors in it. And let this be your table of contents. And if you want to retype it and make it look pretty, you can. But all of these items that are listed on page 22 and page 23, put in your compliance binder. That way, when licensing comes out to check your documents, you can just hand them your binder and they can go, yep, there they are, okay? Nothing is more frustrating to a licensing rep than to have to chase documents all day long. It's like, okay, well, I need a copy of my director certificate, number 4. Well, let's see, where is that? I think I put that on the wall over here. Maybe it's in this drawer, and then you're looking for it. Or the other thing is liability insurance. Where's that liability insurance at? Oh, yeah, I think I stuck that in a folder. And you spend all day long looking for these documents, all right? Get yourself a nice binder and stick everything in your binder. And I do page protectors, so it's all nice and neat. And then I like to do little address labels in the bottom right-hand corner of the page protector that has an example of what we're showing here, and then the actual document is located wherever the actual document is located. So, for example, number 1, where it says children's records. Obviously, I cannot put 200 children's records in a notebook, right? So I'm going to put a sample, of the enrollment forms and all this stuff. I'm going to put a sample of one of these in there, and in my address label, I'll say the actual documents are located in the filing cabinet by the printer, or wherever it's at in your world. Infant feeding instructions, same thing. I'll put a couple of samples in it, but then the actual feeding instructions are on the clipboard in the infant room, next to the changing table, or in the child's file, wherever you've got those. Same thing with training records. Put a copy of your director certificate in there. Your actual director certificate, let's, frame it, make it look nice and pretty, be proud of it. Again, sample of timesheets, but then let them know where they can pull the actual timesheets. If you're doing electronic, that's nice. You'll just say they're inside the computer. You can log in and pull those out. Your liability insurance, you can go ahead and stick that in there. Medication records, playground maintenance checklist. On those grounds checklists, your playground maintenance checklist and your grounds checklist, make sure that you're rotating that around so that different people are doing it every day. Otherwise, you start doing it based on memory rather than what you actually see. So I like to rotate that responsibility, but you're going to have those completed ones in your compliance binder. If you have animals that require vaccinations, you'll want to have those in there. Your fire drills, fire extinguisher checks, smoke detector checks. Also now your lockdown drills, your severe weather drills, all of that is going to be on your safety documentation. Have that in your notebook, right up here with 11. Gas inspection, sanitation inspection. If you get a visit from the health department and the health department goes over your immunizations, they're going to give you an audit report. That audit report needs to go in your compliance binder because now licensing doesn't have to do it. So they love that. If you're on the food program, the CACFP food program, they have a right to review that audit. Same thing with child care services. Your pest control documents need to be in there. Your Consumer Product Safety Commission documents. You have to check anytime there's an unsafe or recalled toy. You have to do a check to make sure that you don't have any of these. Here's your sign in and out sheets. 20 is going to be the documents that your cribs are all in compliance. And then 21 is going to be a document showing the date that you purchased or leased your vehicles. And that's a very important document as well. All right. And again, and the other thing that we do with our compliance binder is it's part of our monthly duties that the director or the assistant director at the beginning of every month will go through the compliance binder and make sure that everything is up to date. And if there's anything that's about to expire, we know to get it taken care of. Because when we talk about your gas inspection, your sanitation inspection, your fire inspection, these are people that typically don't just come out on their own. They don't just show up like licensing. You have to call and schedule these folks. So you got to stay on top of it so that you're not out of compliance. Okay. That's why we go through the book monthly, and then we know we've got to get this stuff done. Same thing with like the fire drills and even severe weather drills and stuff. Going through this monthly, make sure that we're on top of that. Licensing is going to say that you must keep all of these records for at least 3 months. I'm going to suggest that you keep them much, much longer. Any document that is pertains to the child, I would keep indefinitely because a parent has until the child turns 21 to sue you or press charges against you. So you don't want to be throwing that stuff away. All right. Same thing with employee records as well. Remember, I told you Texas Workforce Commission can audit your payroll records back to 7 years. So you want to definitely keep those files longer. They're a different agency than licensing, so their requirements are going to be a little different. All right. Very good. Last bit of information. This is where it's going to talk about electronic records and paper records, or a combination of the two. Like I had mentioned earlier, yes, you can do either electronic or paper as long as access is available. Okay, but this is becoming very popular. On your employees, you just have to have documentation showing the first and last day on the job, documentation showing how the employee meets the minimum age, which is probably going to be a state-issued driver's license or state-issued ID card. This could also be a birth certificate, and education qualifications. So a high school diploma, a high school certificate of completion, the GED, the certificate of homeschool completion would all be number 2. If TB testing is applicable in your area, you've got to have that right there. Number 4 is old, but it's still required. A notarized affidavit stating that your employees are a good person. You can download this document off of licensing's website. It's still required. We keep thinking that someday this is going to go away because your criminal background checks pretty much give you this information. It's redundant, but as of right now, it's still required. All right. Training hours, operating policies, acknowledgement of policies. Number 7, proof that you have requested their background checks. Number 8, a photo identification, a copy of a photo identification. You have to have something proving that that person really is who they say they are. Okay. Without a photo identification, they could say they're anybody. Okay. So that's the purpose behind number 8. Current driver's license for anyone transporting children for obvious reasons. All right. And then 10 is that verification that they received their child abuse and neglect training as part of their orientation. You're going to see this again when we get to professional development. So this is actually in here twice. The same document would be fine for both of them. Okay, again, how long must I keep personnel documents? Again, it's going to tell you 3 months. I'm going to recommend much, much longer. This is not the only agency you have to keep happy. Okay. Of course, licensing can access these documents. All right. There you go. And that is our training today on record keeping. One last piece of advice that I wanted to share with y'all. If you have a document that needs to be filed away, file it immediately. Don't make a little tray and, anytime you want to file something, you just throw stuff in a tray. That tray is going to stack up really fast and you're going to get behind and documents are going to get lost or misplaced. It takes you all of about 5 seconds to pull up in that filing cabinet, file it, you're done with it. All right. But filing and record keeping is something that is super easy as long as you stay on top of it. When you get behind, it's a nightmare. Okay. So just have a good system in place for that. All right. This is where millennials are really good at this job because millennials typically are very organized and are really good with processes. So keeping your records in place is a great job for them. All right. And those of you that were in the director credential course, yes, you should have a copy of a transition sheet. If not, I believe there's one on my website. When you go to timthetrainer.com and go to documents, there's a copy of a transition sheet that you can download, or you can email me and I can send you a copy of a transition sheet. I don't mind sharing with you. All right. But I've got a couple of different versions of it. But it's a good document. And I've changed it up several times over the years. And so it keeps growing and becomes better and better. All right. Awesome Blossom.